My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 29 years old, and last Tuesday at 11:30 p.m., while I was brushing my teeth and getting ready for bed, my boyfriend texted me to say he had crashed my truck. Not our truck, mine. A 2021 Toyota Tacoma I had paid off myself. A truck I had babied for 3 years, cleaned by hand on Sunday mornings, parked as far from other cars as possible, and defended like it had a pulse. The first text came through while I was standing in the bathroom in an oversized t-shirt, one sock on, mascara still faintly smudged under my eyes from work. Baby, please don't freak out. I crashed your truck. I'm okay. I stared at the screen. Then the second message came in before I could even type back. Madison was driving. We were just catching up over coffee. She offered to drive back because I had a headache. She's not used to trucks, so sorry. We'll explain everything when I get home. I read it twice, then a third time. Madison, his ex-girlfriend of 3 years. The woman he had sworn he no longer spoke to. The woman who was completely in the past. The woman he once described, with a tired little shake of his head, as a chapter of his life he had no interest in reopening. And apparently that chapter was now behind the wheel of my truck. My phone felt cold in my hand. I texted back the only thing that made sense in the first stunned seconds. Is everyone safe? Where are you? He replied almost immediately. Yes, we're fine. Cops are here. It's just body damage, baby. Don't worry. Don't worry. I was standing barefoot on the tile floor of our apartment, looking at a text from the man I lived with, who had lied about where he was, met up with his ex, let her drive my vehicle, and was now telling me not to worry. The anger came in slowly. Not hot, not explosive. Cold, precise. It started in my chest and settled somewhere behind my ribs, sharp and steady. Because the truck mattered, yes. The money mattered. The damage mattered. But what hit harder was the image of him sitting beside her in my driver's seat, his headache, her hands on my steering wheel. Their little catch-up that had somehow stretched long enough to end in flashing lights and a police report. I typed back carefully. Okay, be safe. See you when you get home. Love you. He sent a heart. That was when I called my insurance company. The woman on the overnight line had a calm, practiced voice, the kind people use when they've heard every version of disaster. I told her I needed to report an accident involving my vehicle. She asked if I had been driving. No, I said. I wasn't in the car. All right, she said gently. Who was operating the vehicle at the time of the accident? Someone named Madison. A pause. Is Madison listed on your policy? No. And what is her relationship to you? She's my boyfriend's ex-girlfriend. That created a different kind of silence. Then, did you give her permission to drive the vehicle? No, absolutely not. Was your boyfriend in the vehicle at the time? Yes, he was the passenger. I understand. In that case, this may be treated as an unauthorized driver situation. We'll need the police report and the full details, but you should be aware that the driver may be personally liable for damages. Personally liable. The phrase settled over me like something final. I leaned against the kitchen counter and closed my eyes. So my coverage may not apply normally? I asked. There may be limitations depending on the circumstances, she said. But yes, if she was driving without your knowledge or permission, liability shifts significantly. I thanked her, gave her everything I had, and hung up. The apartment was quiet after that. Too quiet. The refrigerator hummed. A motorcycle passed outside. Somewhere in the building, somebody laughed. A short burst through the wall, then silence again. I stood in the kitchen and looked toward the window over the sink. The city lights beyond the glass were soft and blurry in the dark, and for one strange second, everything felt divided into before and after. Before that text. After that text. Before I was the girlfriend who thought she knew where her boyfriend had gone. After I realized he had built an entire evening inside a lie. He got home a little after 1 in the morning. I heard the Uber door outside, then his key, then the soft, hesitant push of the apartment door opening. Evan Cole, 27, walked in with that particular expression guilty people wear when they want forgiveness before they've even told the full story. His hair was messy. His jacket smelled faintly like night air and stale coffee when he came closer. He looked tired, but not devastated. Embarrassed, maybe. Annoyed at the situation, not broken by it. Which told me a lot. Hey, he said carefully. I was sitting on the couch, upright, a blanket folded beside me, the television off. Hey, I said. He dropped his keys into the bowl by the door and rubbed the back of his neck. So, tonight got kind of insane. Kind of. I said nothing. He took that as permission to keep going. I really did run into Madison by accident. It wasn't planned. We got coffee, we talked for a while, and then I got this pounding headache. She offered to drive because I didn't feel great, and she's used to driving bigger cars than she used to, I guess, and She's not used to trucks, I said softly. That's what you texted. He stopped. Right. And you told me you were out running errands. I was, he said quickly. I just also ran into her and stayed long enough to sit down for coffee, talk, catch up, then get in my truck and let your ex drive it. His face tightened. Claire, it wasn't like that. I looked at him then. Which part? For a moment, he just stood there in the yellow spill of light from the kitchen, looking like he was trying to choose the least damaging version of the truth. We were just talking, he said. You're making it sound worse than it was. Am I? He exhaled through his nose. You're upset. I get it. But this wasn't some huge betrayal. It was bad judgment, that's all. Bad judgment, I almost laughed. Instead, I asked, did you know she'd be driving my truck when you got in? He hesitated half a second too long. She offered because my head was killing me. So yes, it wasn't a big deal in the moment. It is now. He opened his hands. Insurance will handle it. The room went still. I let that sentence sit between us for a second before I answered. No, I said, it won't. Not the way you think. His brows pulled together. What does that mean? It means I already called. He stared at me. I reported the accident, I said, and I told them Madison was driving without my knowledge or permission. The color drained from his face so subtly another person might have missed it. You told them she was driving? Yes. Claire. No, I said, standing now. No. Don't do that. Don't stand here in my apartment at 1 a.m. after lying to me, after taking my truck out with your ex, after letting her wreck it and act shocked that I told the truth. His voice sharpened. Do you understand what that could do to her? I blinked once. To her. Not to us. Not to me. To her. That was the moment something inside me shifted for good. She was an unauthorized driver, I said. She may be personally liable. He looked genuinely rattled now. Claire, that could ruin her financially. Then maybe she shouldn't have driven a vehicle she wasn't authorized to drive. She didn't mean to crash it. And I didn't mean to spend my night finding out my boyfriend was with his ex. He dragged a hand over his face and paced once toward the kitchen, then back again. You're being cold. No, I said quietly. I'm being clear. He looked at me like clarity was somehow the crueler thing. Outside, somewhere below our building, a siren wailed and faded into the distance. Inside, the apartment felt smaller than it had that morning. Smaller and no longer shared in the same way. He lowered his voice. Can you call them back? I just looked at him. Claire, he said, stepping closer, please. Just tell them there was a misunderstanding. Tell them she had permission. So I can commit insurance fraud for your ex-girlfriend? His jaw tightened. She's not... Don't, I said. Don't insult me twice in one night. He fell silent. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then I asked, were you really just catching up? He looked away. That was answer enough. I nodded once, slowly, as if confirming something only to myself. Then I picked up the folded blanket from the couch. You can sleep in the bedroom, I said. I'm taking the couch. His expression flickered. Maybe guilt, maybe relief, maybe both. Claire, I don't want to hear anything else tonight. I lay down a few minutes later without changing clothes, staring at the dark ceiling while the apartment settled around me. My truck was probably totaled. My boyfriend had lied to me. His ex had been driving. And the worst part was that somewhere underneath the damage, underneath the paperwork and the police report and the money, I could already feel the shape of the truth. This hadn't started with a crash. The crash had just exposed it. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise with my neck stiff from the couch and my phone already buzzing on the coffee table. For one disoriented second, I forgot why I was there. Then I saw the text preview from the insurance adjuster and remembered everything at once. Accident photos attached. Preliminary assessment indicates severe front-end damage. I sat up too fast and opened the images. The first one stole the air from my lungs. My truck, my beautiful, meticulously maintained truck, was crumpled at the front, like something had taken both hands and crushed it inward. The hood was bent. One headlight was shattered. The airbags had blown. Even in the gray, ugly lighting of the roadside photos, I could tell what the adjuster would confirm later. It was probably totaled. I stared at the screen until the details blurred. 3 years. Paid off. Protected. Maintained. Gone in one stupid night because my boyfriend had decided catching up with his ex was more important than honesty, and because his ex had decided she was entitled to touch things that were never hers. Behind me, I heard the bedroom door open. Evan came out barefoot, hair flattened on one side, moving carefully like he already knew the emotional temperature of the room. Morning, he said. I didn't answer right away. I turned the phone so he could see the photo. That's your morning. He winced. Claire, they think the frame may be bent. He leaned over slightly, looking at the image with a troubled frown that might have meant something to me the day before. Now it felt thin. I'm sorry, he said. I looked up at him. You keep saying that like it's a blanket. Like if you pull it over the situation, everything underneath disappears. He straightened. What do you want me to say? The truth would be a nice change. His face closed off immediately. And there it was again, that instinct to defend himself, to make me feel dramatic for asking obvious questions. He rubbed the back of his neck and moved toward the kitchen. I have to get ready for work. Of course you do, I said. He stopped but didn't turn around. I added, Has Madison contacted you? He was silent for half a second too long. Yes. That half second told me enough. And? She's freaking out. I gave a short, humorless laugh. Good. He turned then, offended. Claire. What? She's scared. And I'm supposed to care more about her fear than what she did? She didn't do this maliciously. No, I said. She did it selfishly. Which is worse, because selfish people always act shocked when consequences arrive. He grabbed a mug from the cabinet harder than necessary. You're acting like I cheated on you. I stood slowly. No, I said, my voice quiet enough to make him look at me properly. I'm acting like I caught you building a door back into an old relationship and then letting that relationship wreck something that mattered to me. His jaw tightened. That's not fair. Neither is waking up to find out your boyfriend lied to your face. He said nothing after that. Just made his coffee, too quietly now, shoulders stiff, like I had become the difficult thing in the room. I watched him and thought, not for the first time, that betrayal rarely looks dramatic in real life. It doesn't always arrive with lipstick on a collar or a confession in the rain. Sometimes it comes home in work clothes, avoiding eye contact, carrying a headache, and a story that almost sounds reasonable if you don't listen too closely. By noon, the first text from Madison came in. Unknown number. Claire, please don't make this worse than it already is. It was an accident. I stared at it for a full 5 seconds before locking my phone and setting it face down. 10 minutes later, another. Unknown number. Evan told me you reported me as unauthorized. That's insane. He was in the car. He said it was fine. I laughed out loud at that. There it was. The logic of people who lived by convenience. He said it was fine. As if Evan had authority over my property. As if my name wasn't the only name on the registration. The lease, the insurance, the payments, the years of care. I still didn't respond. By late afternoon, the adjuster called. His tone was gentle but efficient. Ms. Bennett, based on the police report and visual estimate, we're leaning total loss. We're still confirming market value and associated costs, but the damage is significant. I closed my office door before replying. Do you have a figure yet? Not final, but likely around $38,000 for value, plus rental coverage and associated recovery costs, depending on the claim path. My fingers tightened around the phone. $38,000. Not abstract anymore, not just emotional, not symbolic. Real, heavy, documented. When I got home that evening, Evan was already there. He was sitting at the kitchen table, both elbows on the wood, his phone in his hands, staring at nothing. The apartment smelled faintly like takeout and stress. He looked up when I came in. We need to talk. I set down my bag. Do we? Yes. Then talk. He inhaled slowly. Madison's getting letters. Good for the postal system. Claire. I pulled out a chair across from him and sat, mostly because I wanted to see his face clearly when he said whatever came next. He leaned forward. She could be held personally liable. I know. She can't afford that. I folded my arms. Neither can I. That's why I had insurance. Insurance that doesn't cover random ex-girlfriends driving my truck because my boyfriend felt nostalgic. His expression flashed with anger. You keep twisting it. I keep saying it plainly. She's not some criminal. No, I said. She's worse. She's the kind of person who thinks rules apply only when they're inconvenient. He stood up abruptly and started pacing. This is out of control. No, it's becoming controlled for the first time. He stopped near the counter. You could fix this. I looked at him for a long second. That sentence landed harder than I expected. Not because of what it asked, because of what it assumed. That I was the cleanup crew for his bad choices. That I was supposed to absorb dishonesty, risk, humiliation, and then perform generosity on demand so everyone else could keep their lives neat. You still don't get it, I said. He stared at me. I am not the person who caused this, I continued. I'm just the first person in this story who refuses to lie about it. His face hardened. You're enjoying this. The accusation was so ugly, so revealing, I almost smiled. No, I said, I'm recognizing it. He went quiet. Then he sat down again, slower this time, like his anger had burned through and left something meaner underneath. That night his mother called. Denise. She didn't bother with hello beyond the bare minimum. Claire, you need to fix this right now. I stood by the living room window while the sky outside darkened into blue-black. No, I said. She gave a sharp breath of disbelief. That poor girl doesn't have that kind of money. That poor girl, I said, is a grown woman who chose to drive a vehicle without permission. It was an accident. Yes, after several choices. You're punishing the wrong person. Evan made the mistake. Evan made several, I said, and I'm handling him separately. Silence. Then, colder. If you don't let this go, he's going to leave you. I almost laughed. The timing of that threat, after everything that had already happened, was almost elegant in its stupidity. That would be his choice, I said. She hung up on me. 20 minutes later, his father called. Robert's voice carried that particular male confidence that assumes a lower tone equals authority. Listen, he said, I get that you're upset. I leaned against the window frame and looked at Evan across the room. He was pretending not to listen, which meant he was listening to every word. Do you? I asked. You're destroying someone's financial future over a car accident. It wasn't a car accident, I said. It was a lie, a betrayal, an unauthorized driver, and a totaled truck. He exhaled sharply. Insurance should handle it. It is. You could make this disappear with one phone call. I could also set my apartment on fire for warmth. That doesn't make it a good idea. He did not appreciate that. His tone darkened. You're being vindictive. No, I'm being accurate. He muttered something under his breath that I only partly caught, and none of it was flattering, then ended the call. When I looked up, Evan was watching me openly now. What did he say? He asked. That your family confuses pressure with character. He looked away first. The social media nonsense started the following day. A vague post from his sister Lila about how some people use love as a leash and punishment as power. Then comments from mutual friends. Then little side conversations I was clearly meant to hear about secondhand. Apparently I was jealous. Apparently I was controlling. Apparently I was ruining an innocent woman's life because I was insecure. What they left out was the most important part. Evan and Madison had been together for 3 years. They had broken up only 8 months before he and I started dating. He had told me she was toxic, that she was blocked everywhere, that she was over, and yet somehow she had managed to materialize in a coffee shop, slide into an afternoon, sit in my truck, and become the center of his panic in less than a day. I didn't argue online. I didn't defend myself. I took screenshots. Every post, every message, every number, every timeline inconsistency. Truth rarely shouts at first. It waits. Then, on the 3rd night after the accident, Evan came home carrying takeout from my favorite restaurant. He had also shaved, changed into the dark sweater I once told him made his eyes look softer, and bought the good dumplings instead of the cheap ones. It was all so transparent it almost worked. He set the bag on the counter and gave me a careful smile. I thought maybe we could eat and talk without fighting. I was on the couch with my laptop open, but I closed it slowly. Is that what you think we've been doing? His smile faltered. Claire, come on. He unpacked containers, found plates, moved around the kitchen like this was still ours in the old way. For a second, the scene almost looked ordinary. That was the cruel part. He knew how to create normalcy. He knew how to drape it over damage and asked me to admire how peaceful it looked. He brought me a plate and sat down across from me at the coffee table. I've been thinking, he said. You're right to be upset. I said nothing. I shouldn't have lied about seeing Madison. There it was. Not I shouldn't have seen her. Not I shouldn't have let her drive. Just the smallest version of the wrongdoing, polished and presented like a gift. He kept going. But destroying her financially isn't the answer. It's just going to drag this out and create more drama for us. Us. I set my fork down. There is no us anymore, Evan. He froze. The room didn't move. Not the air, not the city lights outside, not even him for a full second. Then what? I looked at him with a calm that surprised even me. I'm ending this. His face changed in layers. Confusion first. Then offense. Then wounded disbelief, like I had failed some invisible test of patience. You're breaking up with me over a truck? I held his gaze. I'm breaking up with you over lying to me, meeting your ex behind my back, letting her drive my truck, then spending 3 days trying to protect her instead of taking responsibility. He stared. The tears came fast after that, but not the kind that moved me. I made one mistake, he said. No, I answered. You made several choices. He shook his head, already slipping into self-pity. I love you. Then you had a very strange way of showing it. His breathing turned uneven. Where am I supposed to go? The question was so immediate, so practical, so revealing, that I almost laughed again. Not have I lost you? Not can we fix this? Where am I supposed to go? Your parents seem very invested, I said. I'm sure they'll help. You're kicking me out? You have 30 days. That's the legal requirement for month-to-month occupancy. I'll send formal notice tonight. His eyes widened. You're serious? Yes. He pushed back from the table so suddenly one of the takeout containers tipped sideways. Unbelievable. No, I said softly. What was unbelievable was watching you come home more worried about Madison's future than mine. He stood there, breathing hard, then grabbed his phone and walked into the bedroom. A few seconds later, I heard his muffled voice. Not crying alone. Calling someone. Probably his mother. Maybe his sister. Maybe Madison. I sat in the living room with untouched food cooling on the table and listened to the man I had loved begin the next version of the story, the one where he would make himself sound helpless and me sound cruel. But the truth was simpler than that. He had lied. He had chosen her comfort over my trust. And now, for the first time since the accident, the consequences were no longer arriving just for Madison. They were arriving for him too. The apartment didn't feel like mine anymore. Not fully. Not cleanly. Even though my name was still the only one on the lease, even though every piece of furniture had been chosen by me or paid for by me, even though legally and practically nothing had changed. Emotionally, everything had. Evan didn't leave right away. Of course he didn't. People like him never leave at the moment they should. They stay just long enough to make things worse. The first 2 days after the breakup, he went quiet. Not apologetic. Not reflective. Strategic. He moved around the apartment like a guest who resented the rules of the house but wasn't ready to give up the benefits. Doors closed a little harder, footsteps heavier. Conversations reduced to the bare minimum unless they served him. Then the sabotage started. Small things at first. The kind that looked accidental if you didn't know better. Tuesday morning, I woke up to water pooling slowly across the bathroom tiles. The toilet was clogged. Badly. Too much paper, too little care. I stood there staring at it while water crept toward the hallway like it had all the time in the world. Evan, I called. He appeared in the doorway a minute later, leaning against the frame like he had nothing to do with it. What? The toilet's clogged. He shrugged. Didn't notice. Of course he didn't. The plumber cost me $200. He didn't offer to help. Wednesday night at exactly 2:07 a.m., I woke up to laughter. Loud. Sharp. Too many voices. I sat up on the couch, my couch now, permanently, and looked toward the hallway. Music was playing faintly from the bedroom. I walked down and pushed the door open. 3 girls sat on the bed with him, wine glasses in their hands, faces flushed with that particular mix of alcohol and performative sympathy. Claire, one of them said too brightly. We were just having an emergency girls' night, I finished. Evan didn't look embarrassed. He looked annoyed. She's going through a lot, he said. I glanced around the room. At the open wine bottle. At the shoes scattered across my floor. At the girl sitting where I used to sit. Then take it somewhere that isn't my apartment, I said. She has tenant rights, one of the girls muttered under her breath, clearly not understanding the situation and not caring to. I stepped back from the door. Everyone out, I said calmly. Now? Now. They left. Not quietly. Not gracefully. But they left. The next morning, I got a warning from the building about noise complaints. Thursday, the storage unit key went missing. The same key we used for seasonal boxes, documents, things that actually mattered. I can't find it, Evan said, not even trying to sound convincing. Try harder. I already did. Of course he had. Friday was worse. I got a notification from my bank while I was at work. $612.48. Retail purchase. My stomach dropped before I even opened the app. Authorized user. Still active. Still attached to him. I called the number immediately. Hi, I need to dispute a charge and remove an authorized user from my account. By the time I got home, the card was canceled, the charge flagged, and his access revoked. He was sitting at the kitchen counter when I walked in. You used my card, I said. He didn't deny it. I needed clothes. For what? For interviews. You're making me homeless. The entitlement in that sentence was almost impressive. I'm giving you 30 days. That's not homelessness, that's notice. You think I can just rebuild my life in a month? He snapped. I stepped closer, setting my bag down slowly. You rebuilt your relationship with your ex in an afternoon, I said. I think you'll manage. He stood up then, anger flashing sharp and quick. You're unbelievable. No, I said quietly. I'm consistent. Saturday was the breaking point. I came home from work, tired and ready for silence, and knew something was wrong before I even opened the door. Voices. 2. One of them wasn't his. I pushed the door open slowly, and there she was. Madison, sitting on my couch, eating food from my kitchen, like she belonged there. For a second, everything went still. The room, the air, even my heartbeat felt like it paused just long enough to let the moment settle. Then I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. What the hell is she doing here? Evan stood up quickly. Claire, just... No, I said. You don't get to just anything. What is she doing in my apartment? Madison set her plate down, her expression shifting from defensive to carefully composed. I came to talk. I looked at her, really looked at her, at the woman who had sat behind my wheel, who had helped destroy my truck, who had somehow convinced herself she had the right to step into my home afterward. You have 5 seconds, I said, to leave. Evan stepped forward. Claire, stop. Or I call the police. Madison stood up slowly. You're overreacting. I almost smiled. No, I said. This is the first appropriate reaction I've had all week. Evan moved between us slightly, like he was trying to manage the situation. Can we just talk about the insurance? No, I cut in. We cannot. Madison crossed her arms. This is affecting my life. I stepped closer. You affected my life when you decided you had the right to drive something that wasn't yours. I didn't think... Exactly. Silence. Sharp. Tight. Then Evan tried again, softer this time. Claire, just hear her out. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and unlocked it. I am hearing her out, I said. I'm also dialing. That did it. Madison grabbed her bag. This isn't over, she muttered. Correct, I said. It's just beginning for you. She left. The door shut behind her with a finality that felt almost satisfying. I turned back to Evan. Pack your things. His face hardened instantly. The notice says 30 days. The notice changes when you violate basic terms. I have rights. And I have a lawyer, I said calmly, even though I hadn't called one yet, and documentation. And a very low tolerance for this situation continuing. He stared at me, breathing hard. You can't just... I can, I said, and I will. That was when he snapped. You're doing all of this because you're jealous. The word hung in the air like something rotten. I tilted my head slightly. Jealous of what? He didn't answer immediately, which meant he knew exactly how that sounded. Then, from the hallway, a voice I hadn't expected cut in. Maybe because he went back to someone who actually understands him. I turned. Lila, his sister, standing just inside the doorway, arms crossed, expression sharp, with that particular brand of misplaced loyalty. I blinked once, then slowly, repeat that. Evan's face went pale. Lila, but she was already committed. Evan and Madison have history, Lila said. You were never really the right fit anyway. The room went quiet. Completely. Utterly. I looked at Evan, not at Lila. At him. Is that true? His silence lasted exactly 1 second too long. Then, it's complicated. There it was. The truth. Finally stepping out of the shadows because it was too tired to hide anymore. I nodded once. Slow. Measured. Not to me, I said. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. Claire? No, I said softly. We're past that part. I stepped back, giving him space. Not as kindness. As distance. You have 48 hours now, I said. Not 30 days. His head snapped up. You can't... I can, I said. You just admitted, in front of a witness, that this relationship overlapped in ways you never disclosed. Lila shifted slightly, realizing too late what she had just done. Evan looked between us, anger and panic fighting for control. You're blowing this out of proportion. No, I said. I'm finally seeing it in proportion. The hallway felt too small for all of us now. Too crowded with truth. Too heavy with things that should have been said earlier. I walked to the door and opened it. 48 hours, I repeated. No yelling. No drama. Just finality. They left. Not together. Not cleanly. But they left. And for the first time since the accident, the apartment felt quiet again. Not peaceful. Not yet. But closer. Because the illusion was gone now. And without illusion, there was only reality. And reality, no matter how ugly, was something I could finally work with. Sunday was quiet. Too quiet. That kind of silence that doesn't mean peace. It means something is waiting. Evan stayed in the bedroom most of the day. I could hear drawers opening, closing, things shifting, the low murmur of phone calls he thought I couldn't hear. Every now and then, footsteps toward the kitchen, water running, then retreat again. No confrontation, no apology, no resolution. Just distance stretched thin between two people who used to share everything and now shared nothing except square footage. I didn't push. I didn't need to. Because at this point, I wasn't trying to fix anything. I was just waiting for everything to finish breaking. Monday morning, I got called into my boss's office. That alone was enough to put something sharp in my chest. Claire, he said, closing the door behind me, we received a concerning call about you. I felt it immediately. Not confusion, recognition. What kind of call? I asked. He leaned against his desk. Someone claiming to be a concerned friend. They said you've been exhibiting unstable behavior at home, that you've been threatening your boyfriend and his family. For a split second, I just stood there. Then I let out a slow breath. Of course they would try this. When pressure doesn't work, people like that escalate. That's not true, I said calmly. I figured, he replied, but I have to ask. I understand. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. I've been documenting everything. I showed him the accident report, the insurance claim, the texts, the timestamps, the photos, the messages from unknown numbers, the threats, the pattern. He went through it all in silence. Then he exhaled. Yeah, he said quietly. This looks vindictive. It is. He nodded once. Take the rest of the day if you need to deal with it. I'm fine, I said. But I appreciated the offer, because it meant something important. Their version of the story hadn't worked. The truth had. When I got home, Evan was in the living room. Boxes. Half packed. Not moving fast. Not urgent. Just enough effort to look like he was complying. I set my keys down. Did you call my workplace? He didn't look up. I don't know what you're talking about. I watched him for a long second. Then I nodded slowly. Let me be clear about something, I said. If you try to interfere with my job again, it won't end well for you. That got his attention. He looked up, irritation flashing. What? You're going to ruin my life? I tilted my head slightly. You're doing a pretty good job of that on your own. His jaw tightened. Everything is always someone else's fault with you, isn't it? I almost laughed. No, I said. That's actually your specialty. He stood up, pacing once like he needed movement to hold on to his anger. You've taken this way too far. No, I said calmly. I have taken it exactly as far as your actions required. His phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it, then quickly flipped it face down. Too late. I had already seen the name. Madison. Of course. I didn't comment. I didn't need to, because at this point, everything spoke for itself. That afternoon, I got another message. Unknown number. My parents are involved now. If you don't drop the claim, they will come after you too. I stared at the screen for a second, then forwarded it directly to my insurance contact. No reply. No emotion. Just documentation. Because that's what this had become. Not a relationship. Not even a breakup. A case. That night, Evan barely spoke. He packed a little more, took a few things from the shelves, left others behind like they no longer mattered, which to him, they probably didn't. Because nothing in this apartment had ever been fully his. Tuesday morning, I woke up to silence. Real silence this time. I sat up slowly. Listened. No footsteps. No drawers. No breathing from the bedroom. I stood and walked down the hall. The door was open. The room was half empty. Clothes gone. Shoes gone. The small things. The essentials. But not everything. Not yet. Because he had stretched every hour of the deadline as far as he could, and he was going to use every second of it. When he came back that afternoon, he didn't come alone. I heard the elevator. Then voices. Multiple. Loud. Confident. The kind of voices that arrive already convinced they're in the right. A knock. Sharp. Impatient. I opened the door. And there they were. Robert. Denise. Lila. All standing in the hallway like they owned the space. Robert stepped forward immediately. You're going to drop this insurance claim. Straight to it. No greeting. No attempt at civility. Just demand. I leaned against the doorframe. No. His expression darkened. I'm not asking. I noticed. Denise stepped in next, her tone softer but no less manipulative. Claire, please. Madison's parents are threatening to cut her off. She'll lose everything. I looked at her, then at him, then back at her. Then maybe she should have thought about that before she got behind the wheel. It was an accident. Driving without permission wasn't. Lila rolled her eyes. You're so petty. I smiled slightly. And you're so predictable. That didn't land well. Robert stepped closer. You're going to regret this. I held his gaze. I already regret trusting your son. Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Then Denise tried again. Tears this time. Please, you're ruining 2 lives. I didn't even hesitate. I didn't ruin anything. They made choices. This is just what those choices look like. Behind them, Evan shifted uncomfortably. Because he knew. He knew this wasn't working. He knew I wasn't the person they thought I was. Lila scoffed. No wonder he went back to Madison. There it was again. That little slip. That little confirmation. I glanced at Evan. He didn't correct her. Of course he didn't. Because he couldn't. Because at this point, denying it would just make him look worse. I straightened slightly. You have 1 hour, I said. Robert blinked. Excuse me? To get his things and leave. You can't. I can, I said calmly. And if you're all still here after that, I will call the police and have you removed for trespassing. That shifted the energy. Not completely, but enough. Because now there was something real in the room. Not emotion. Not manipulation. Consequence. Robert stared at me like he wanted to say more. Like he wanted to push harder. But even he could feel it. The line. And the fact that I wasn't going to move it for anyone. Fine, he muttered. They moved past me into the apartment. Boxes. Bags. Angry movements. Sharp whispers. Blame flying in every direction except the one that mattered. I stood in the doorway and watched. Not helping. Not interfering. Just witnessing. Because this wasn't my mess to clean. It never had been. An hour later, they were gone. All of them. The apartment door closed. The lock clicked. And just like that, it was over. Not the situation. Not the consequences. But the part where I had to share space with someone who didn't respect me. I walked slowly through the apartment. The bedroom. Half empty. The closet. Space where his things used to be. The kitchen. Quiet. Still, mine again. For the first time since the accident, I could breathe properly. Not because things were fixed, but because the chaos had finally been removed from my space. And whatever came next, at least it would happen on my terms. The apartment felt different the next morning. Not quieter, cleaner, like the air itself had shifted after something heavy finally left. I woke up in my own bed for the first time in days. No footsteps in the hallway, no doors closing, no tension sitting in the walls like something waiting to explode. Just stillness. And for the first time since the accident, I didn't feel like I was reacting. I felt like I was watching. Because everything that came after that point, I didn't have to chase it anymore. It started coming to me. 3 days later, I got a message from a number I recognized. Brittany, one of Madison's friends. The only one who had ever treated me like a person instead of a temporary placeholder. Brittany, hey, I don't know if you want to hear this, but I thought you should know. I stared at the message for a second, then replied, Me, go ahead. There was a pause, then 3 dots. Then, Brittany, Madison's not with Evan anymore. I leaned back slightly against the couch. Not surprised. Just confirmed. Brittany. She moved in with Evan. They tried to make it work. It didn't. I didn't respond immediately. So she kept going. Brittany. He can't afford anything. The insurance thing is way worse than she thought. She expected him to take care of everything. There it was. The fantasy collapsing. Because people like that don't plan for reality. They plan for comfort, for someone else to absorb the cost. And when that doesn't happen, everything breaks. Brittany, they've been fighting constantly. Money, space, everything. He's stressed. She's angry. It's ugly. I could picture it too easily. The cramped apartment, the resentment, the realization that us against the world sounds romantic until the world sends a bill. Me, and now? There was a longer pause this time. Then, Brittany, he kicked her out. I let out a slow breath. Not satisfaction. Not quite. Just inevitability. Brittany. She's crashing on my couch right now, and honestly, I don't think she's staying long. I smiled slightly, because that part tracked too. Burn enough bridges, and eventually there's nowhere left to stand. Then came the part that made me sit up a little straighter. Brittany. Also, she found out he's been texting his other ex. I actually laughed at that. Soft. Short. Sharp. Of course he had. Patterns don't disappear. They repeat. Me. Thanks for telling me. Brittany. You deserve to know, and I'm sorry about everything. I didn't reply after that. I didn't need to, because closure doesn't always come from the people who hurt you. Sometimes it comes from the people who saw it happening. A week later, the insurance update came through. Final numbers. Final confirmation. Total loss. Market value. $38,000. Rental coverage. $1,800. Additional claims and fees pushing total liability over $50,000. I read the email twice, then closed it, because the number wasn't shocking anymore. It was just real, documented, final, and it wasn't mine. But the story didn't stop there, because Madison, in what I can only describe as pure desperation, tried one last move. She filed a claim through her own insurance, claiming she had permission to drive my truck. I almost admired the audacity. Almost. Her insurance company reached out to mine, and mine responded with everything. The registration. My name only. The lease. My name only. The messages. Clear. Undeniable. Her own statement to the police. That she had driven without asking. It took less than a week. They dropped her. Not just the claim. Her entire coverage. For fraud. And just like that, she didn't just owe money. She had no protection left at all. A few days after that, I got another call. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something told me to. Hello? A man's voice. Older. Measured. Is this Claire Bennett? Yes. This is Madison's father. I straightened slightly. Not surprised. Just curious. I wanted to apologize. That caught me off guard. Not because it was unexpected, because of how rare it was. She made choices, he continued. Bad ones. And we enabled her longer than we should have. I didn't say anything. He exhaled slowly. She's on her own for this. There it was. The final severing. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just done. I appreciate you saying that, I replied. I also wanted you to know, he added, this isn't the first time. Of course it wasn't. It won't happen again, he said. I didn't ask what that meant, because I already understood. When consequences finally arrive, sometimes they don't knock. They remove everything. The last update came quietly. No drama, no confrontation, just information. Madison had tried to go back to Evan. He had already moved on to someone else. The cycle continuing, without pause, without reflection, without change. She lost the apartment, lost the relationship, lost her support system, and eventually lost the version of the story where she was the victim. And me? I picked up my new truck a week later, a 2023 Tacoma. Better features, cleaner lines. Still mine. I sat behind the wheel for a long moment before starting it, hands resting lightly on the steering wheel. Breathing in, steady, calm, clear. Because this time, there was no one else in the story who had access to it. No shared assumptions, no blurred boundaries. Just me, and the quiet understanding that some losses don't take things from you. They remove the people who shouldn't have had access in the first place. A month later, everything was quiet. Not empty, not lonely, just settled. The kind of quiet you only notice after chaos has finally burned itself out. The legal side wrapped up first. Madison filed for bankruptcy. Chapter 7. I didn't even hear it from her. I heard it from the insurance contact in the same calm, neutral tone they'd used from the beginning. They recovered a portion of the amount, he said. Around $3,000. The rest has been discharged. I leaned back in my chair, phone pressed lightly to my ear. Does that affect me at all? No, he replied. You weren't at fault. Your rates won't increase. Of course they wouldn't, because for once, I hadn't absorbed the consequences of someone else's decisions. Madison, on the other hand, she unraveled. Not all at once, not dramatically, just steadily. Brittany texted me again one night. Brittany, she got kicked out. I didn't even need to ask where. Brittany. Borrowed money, didn't pay it back, started fights. I couldn't keep her here. I stared at the message, then replied. Me, understood. There was a pause. Then, Brittany. She tried going back to Evan. I let out a slow breath. Of course she did. Because when everything falls apart, people like that don't rebuild. They retreat. They look for the last place that still feels familiar, even if it's already gone. Brittany, he's with someone else now. That made me smile. Not because I cared about him, but because it confirmed something simple. He hadn't changed. He had just moved on. A few days after that, I saw him. By accident. At a gas station. I had just pulled in, stepped out of my new truck, keys in hand, and there he was, standing by an old, worn-out car that looked like it had seen better years and worse decisions. For a second, he didn't recognize me. Then he did. His eyes dropped immediately to the truck, then back to me, then away again. Fast. Too fast. Like looking directly at me was uncomfortable now. Like seeing the result of everything he had lost. Made it real. He didn't say anything. Didn't approach. Didn't even try. He just got into his car and drove away. And I stood there for a second longer than necessary, watching the space where he had been. Not sad. Not angry. Just finished. The last message I got surprised me. Not from him. Not from Madison. From his grandmother. A woman I had met exactly twice. Soft-spoken. Observant. The kind of person who saw more than she said. Grandmother. Claire, I heard what happened. I'm ashamed of how my grandson behaved. I blinked at the screen, then kept reading. Grandmother, you did the right thing. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Something about that, about hearing it from someone inside his family, landed differently, more final, more grounded. Grandmother, he needed to learn this. Whether he does, I don't know. I smiled faintly, because I knew the answer. Then the last line. Grandmother, you deserve better. I typed back a simple thank you, and that was it. No long conversation, no reopening anything. Just acknowledgement. I repainted the apartment the following weekend. Moved the furniture. Changed the layout. Got rid of things that didn't feel like mine anymore. Not because they were damaged, but because they were tied to a version of my life that no longer existed. The space felt lighter after that. Not perfect, but honest. I started dating again. Slowly. Carefully. Coffee first. Conversation second. Clarity always. No assumptions. No blurred lines. No, it's complicated. Because I had learned something simple and expensive. Complicated is just another word people use when they don't want to tell the truth. Every now and then, I'd see something online. A vague post. A quote about growth. About leaving toxic situations. About finding yourself. From Madison. The comments underneath were less supportive. People had figured it out. Eventually, truth catches up. It always does. Looking back, the moment that changed everything still feels strangely small. Just a text. Don't be mad, he said. Like what came next would be minor. Forgivable. Temporary. But that's the thing about moments like that. They don't just reveal damage, they reveal character. And once you see that clearly, you can't unsee it. I didn't ruin Madison's life. She did that the moment she decided rules didn't apply to her. I didn't ruin Evan's future. He did that the moment he chose comfort over honesty. I just refused to stand in front of the consequences and take the hit for them. The last thing I did before fully closing that chapter was install a dash cam in my new truck. Not because I was paranoid, because I was done trusting blindly. Done assuming people would respect what wasn't theirs. Done believing that love meant overlooking red flags. Now, no one drives my truck but me. Not even for a minute. Not even for convenience. Because some lessons, you only need to learn once. And if I ever get another text like that again, don't be mad. I already know exactly what I'll do. I won't argue. I won't explain. I won't fix it. I'll just walk away before the damage gets expensive.